All right, today we are diving into something huge. We're talking about the very plumbing of the global economy. And we're doing it based on this really fascinating paper by Roshan Gaitamanyan called Constitutional Settlement.
So let me ask you a question. Who actually has the power to just turn off the global flow of money? I mean, who gets to decide to freeze a country's assets or just cut them off from the entire international financial system? Well, it turns out that immense power, and I mean immense, rests in very few hands and with very few rules. So let's dive in and see how this whole thing actually works.
Okay, so to really get a grip on the problem, we first got to understand the system itself. And the paper uses this brilliant analogy that I think just nails it, the world's financial plumbing. You know, it's that invisible infrastructure that makes basically everything possible, from your late-night online shopping to massive international trade deals.
Because when you send money overseas, it doesn't just poof, teleport to the other side of the world. Nope, it travels through this incredibly complex web of messaging systems, correspondent banks, and clearinghouses. It's this hidden technical marvel that we all rely on, probably every single day, without even realizing it's there. But, and this is a big but, here's the catch. This global network, it's not really decentralized. Not at all. Almost everything funnels through a tiny number of key choke points. Think the US dollar, for example, or a handful of major clearing institutions. And this concentration of power, well, that creates a major vulnerability.
So the paper argues that this concentration isn't just a quirky technical feature. No, it's a fundamental institutional design flaw. See, the problem isn't that someone can enforce rules, it's how they get to do it. The entire system is basically operating without a proper rulebook, without a real constitutional framework. And the paper, well, it puts it perfectly.
That quote really just nails the whole issue. It's not about pointing fingers at bad actors. It's about a system that's just missing the kind of checks and balances you'd absolutely expect for something this powerful. It's a structural problem.
So this is the crucial point, right here. It's the contrast between the system we have now and the fix the paper is proposing. Right now, we've got what's called administrative discretion. Basically, a single authority can make a massive call with almost no transparency and no clear way for anyone to appeal it. What this paper proposes is a shift to constitutional constraint, where that power is tied down, bound by a clear rule book that everyone has already agreed to ahead of time.
And this design flaw, it creates three huge tensions that are constantly pulling the system apart. First, you've got this tug of war between the efficiency of a centralized system and the need for a pluralistic one, where no single player has all the power. Second, there's the drive for super robust compliance, which sounds good, but it can lead to this thing called de-risking. That's where big banks, just to avoid any regulatory headaches, will literally cut off business with entire countries, severing vital lifelines for ordinary people. And third, you have that classic push and pull between a nation's own sovereignty and its deep reliance on this interconnected global system. So with these fundamental forces pulling in all different directions, it's pretty clear a new approach is desperately needed.
Okay, so what's the solution? How do we fix this? Well, the paper introduces a really powerful concept it calls a constitutional settlement. And you can think of it exactly like it sounds. It's like creating a constitution, a formal rulebook for how this global financial plumbing is actually governed. And the core idea here is honestly brilliantly simple. It's all about building the rules, the procedural constraints, directly into the infrastructure itself. So power isn't just based on trust or someone's discretion anymore, it's formally and automatically limited by the system's own built-in code of conduct. And this is a really, really key point. The proposal isn't to, rip everything out and start over from scratch with some new blockchain or a global currency. Not at all. It's a governance innovation. It's a set of rules that can be layered right on top of the systems we already use, which makes it so much more politically and technically realistic.
Okay, so this all sounds good in theory, but how would this rulebook actually work in practice? Well, the paper lays out four key pillars, four institutional designs that are the foundation of this new system. Let's break them down.
Okay, number one, enforcement is mode-bound. All that means is you use different rules for different situations. Simple. Second, a multi-sovereign quorum. In other words, no single country gets to be the judge, jury, and executioner. Big decisions require a group vote. Third, and this one is so important, any restrictions are time-limited by default. They just expire automatically, no endless sanctions. And finally, number four, due process is baked right into the system. The right to notice, evidence, and appeal, it's all built in from the get-go.
Let's zoom in on those enforcement modes for a second.
In normal mode, it's just business as usual, standard monitoring, nothing crazy. Then you have incident mode. If there's a credible threat, okay, a temporary hold can be placed, but, and this is key, it's always time limited. And then there's emergency mode, this is the big one, reserved only for true, immediate systemic threats. And even then, the powers are strictly temporary. This is so important because it prevents what some people call the normalization of emergency powers. So, you might be asking, why does any of this matter? What's the payoff? Well, the benefits are actually huge. A system with a clear rulebook is just more legitimate. People trust it more. It's less fragile because it's not totally dependent on the whims of one or two powerful countries. It makes the whole global order more resilient. It distributes the political heat of making those really tough calls, and it gives everyone, from giant banks to small businesses, the one thing they crave: predictability.
Now, I know what you're thinking. This all sounds great in theory, but how on earth could we ever make this a reality? It sounds huge. Well, the paper actually suggests a very clever, very pragmatic path forward.
The strategy isn't to try and get every single country on Earth to sign some massive, complicated treaty. That would take forever. Instead, the idea is to start small, with a voluntary coalition of willing countries. Maybe some influential middle powers who agree to build and test this system just among themselves first.
And they wouldn't try to boil the ocean, right? They wouldn't try to solve everything at once. They'd start with what the paper calls narrow corridor pilot projects. So for example, they could create a special, rule-bound channel designed just for sending humanitarian aid, or maybe one just for financing climate projects. These are small, controlled tests designed to prove that the concept actually works in the real world.
And the goal here is absolutely crucial to understand. This isn't about tearing down or replacing the current system. Not at all. It's about adding to it. It's about building a more resilient financial order through pluralism, by having a reliable, rule-bound alternative that actually enhances the global economy, instead of fragmenting it. And that really brings us to the final, big question this paper leaves us chewing on. In a world where our finances are so deeply interconnected, and the power to control that flow is so incredibly concentrated, shouldn't that power come with a clear, fair, and transparent rulebook? It's a huge question, and it gets right to the very heart of how we choose to govern our shared global systems.